So here's the unit rate sheet from today. We're going to go over this very briefly, if we can. So we talked about some of this in class. We're just going to build off of that into the idea and the concept of unit rate and how to look at it, when it's useful, and all that I think is covered in this sheet. Now your sheet's very small, and I apologize. I was trying to do double front and back, and I copied it wrong. But I'm putting this here so you can really see, bigger, in case you're having trouble seeing it, so you can hopefully fit your writing in. If you have a printer and you want to, I'll copy the other one, and you can just print it off, and you'll have it in a bigger form. And I apologize that it's so small. All right, so you have your ratio of sunflowers to roses is 2 to 6. And what they said is, you could actually, work with this a little bit more. Let me get my pen here. You could say, well, what if I split these into 2 different sunflowers? Well, if I divided these roses, I'd put one here, one over there, one here, one here, and then one more there, one more there. So each group would get 3 roses. So the ratio of sunflowers to roses is 2 to 6. But we could also say that if we divide up these roses between, we could say that there's a 1 to 3 ratio as well. We were basically reducing the ratio. Now, proceeding with this, you may want to also know how many sunflowers go with every 1 rose. Well, we know it's going to be part of a sunflower because if the ratio is 1 to 3 of sunflowers to roses, we know that the only way to figure out for every 1 rose is to divide this sunflower up. And so that's what they're showing you here. They're saying, well, if I have 1 rose, it would get, since there are 3, a third of the sunflower. This would get a third. This would go with a third. So what they're saying here is 1/3 sunflower for every 1 rose. So, and you could go right back to this by saying, well, what if I have 1 whole sunflower? Well, that would be 3 roses, 1 to 3. So thus the unit rate, or the ratio, the first quantity per the second one, is 1/3. I can move it over. Nope, it's not working. Let me escape from this. Sorry about that. And going down, let's see. All right. Thus the unit rate is 1/3 of a sunflower per 1 rose. Now that's generally not the way you're going to write unit rate. We're going to look at it. Usually it won't have a fraction, but occasionally it will right there. So I'm glad they showed it to you that way. It says you could also find the unit rate for roses to sunflowers. This would be 3 roses for every 1 sunflower. And here's what makes something a unit rate, and this is where I wanted to show you this sheet. The denominator is a 1 per every 1. Unit means out of 1, or at least in this case it does. 3 roses for every 1. So anytime you're trying to find a unit rate, what that means is you're finding out for 1. How much out of 1? When we did the warm-up today and you found out how much for every Lean Cuisine meal, you found out how much for every 1. That's what unit rate is. So that 1 is that key. And you could do it either way. You could do roses to sunflowers, which would be 3 roses for every 1 sunflower. Or you could, just like here, do sunflowers to roses. 1/3 sunflowers, 1/3 sunflower per every 1 rose. What makes it a unit rate, regardless of how you set it up, is if there's a 1 as the denominator of this fraction. That's what makes it a unit rate. So let's look at the next set of slides. So this slide says that John walks at a constant rate of 8 miles for every 3 hours. Answer the following. And the reason this word constant means that his speed doesn't change. It's, if his speed's going up and down, it may say average rate instead. Constant means it's the same the whole way. He doesn't speed up, he doesn't slow down. So what is the rate written as miles per hour? So we have 8 miles per every 3 hours. Then it says use a bar model. We're not going to do that. I'm just going to show you what we did in class today. So basically it wants us to find the unit rate. How much for every 1? So all you have to do is fill in here, because unit rate implies 1. You don't need your second. All you need is how many miles. So to do that, in class we talked about to change something to a unit rate, you divide. We have 8 miles, And we need to put miles on top because it comes first over 3 hours. And remember, when we divide, you always put your numerator inside your denominator outside. 3 goes into 8 2 times, which is 6. Leaves us with 2. That's where our decimal comes from. 3 goes into 20 6 times, which is 18. We're going to get another 2, so you can see we're going to have that 6 repeats. Since we're talking about miles, I don't really want a repeating decimal, so I'm just going to round it. If it's 2.6 and the 6's keep going, I'll just round it to the tenths. Since that's more than 5, I'll do 2.7. It'll be 2.7. So his unit rate is 2.7, 2 7/10 miles for every 1 hour. Or another way to write that is 2.7, sorry about that, miles per hour, 2.7 miles per hour. So to find a unit rate, all you do is you set up your rate and then you divide. We put miles on top because miles comes first. And if you're doing miles per hour, the miles would always be on top. So now I ask, how far can he walk in 5 hours? Well, he's going 2.7 miles per hour. We found that. That's the unit rate. And just like today, we did that warm-up where we had I think it was like a candy bar or something, and we found out how much it cost. Well, the next thing after we found the unit rate is we multiplied it. And that's what you're going to do here. You have 2.7, 2 7/10 miles per hour. Well, in 5 hours, you can multiply here and see how far he's gone. I'll let you finish that. But go ahead and do multiply that and write the answer. One of the things we do with rates and ratios is we extend the pattern and make tables. So our pattern is every 1 hour we go 2.7 miles. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. Well, after 0 hours, how far have we gone? Nowhere. So 0 hours, 0 miles. After 2, if we keep going at this same rate and add 2.7 on, well, 2.7 plus 2.7, I think 5.4. And we're just going to keep going every time it's going up that unit rate, 2.7. So if we add another 2.7, we get 8.1. An alternative way, instead of just adding 2.7 each time, is you could say 2.7 times 4 here, just like we did up here, and that would be 10.8. Then we'll do it times 5, or we can just add 2.7 more, 13.5. Then 6, 16.2. And 10, we just say 2.7 times 10, should be 27. 20, 2.7 times 20, be 54. And each time what we're doing is we're multiplying this number times 2.7 because that's the unit rate. So what we could write here is, since we're multiplying the hours by 2.7, we'll just put 2.7 times the number of hours. And that's the table. Then it says, where on the table can you find the unit rates in miles per hour? Well, I go to 1 hour. The unit rate is for 1, so that would be right here. So that's where we would find the unit rates. It's the second number, it's the second number on the chart. And just leave this blank. Let's not worry about that just yet. All right, so the directions here, and once again, anything I don't know in the video, you don't have to do, so just skip over whatever I'm not doing. The directions here said write 2 possible unit rates. And so what we need to do is basically, we can write a rate here for slices of meat, 2 sandwiches. So that rate would be 24 slices of meat for every 6 sandwiches. In order to find the unit rate, you just divide 24 divided by 6. Well, 6 goes into 24. Let's see, 4 times. So the unit rate would be 4 slices per sandwich. That's one way you could write it. Or you could write 4 to 1, or you could write 4 over 1, or just any of those ways. So that's 1 unit rate. Now you could also, this is really the most helpful one, but you could also figure out, well, all right, how many sandwiches per slice of meat? You could say, well, if we have 6 sandwiches, we have 24 slices of meat. So if I divide in this case, well, 24 won't go into 6. So you have 2 options. What I wouldn't do, what you want to do probably just naturally is you're wanting to make this into a decimal. I wouldn't do it that way. The way I would do it, and this, I'm hesitant to explain this. I know it's going to take a lot of work in class, so don't freak out about this yet. But what I would do is, we know we're finding unit rate, so I know I need a 1 there, right? I need a 1. This is just a fraction, 6/24. So what I would do is just say, well, it's 6/24 slices. If I reduce that, it'd be 1 out of 4. So what I would do is I'd just say, well, you need every 1/4 slice of meat, or every 1/4 sandwich has 1 slice of meat. So that would be the unit rate for sandwiches to meat. Every 1 slice of meat makes 1/4 of a sandwich, which means you need 4 of those to make 1 sandwich. This is probably a lot more confusing, but the good news is it's less important. So if you didn't get that, it's not as big a deal. This is what's more important, that you can do this. If you were thinking which one's more useful, I'm not making 1/4 of a sandwich, so this is much more useful because I'm going to make a whole sandwich. I know I need 4 slices of meat to do it. This doesn't help us for much. And that's a good thing. If you ever get like 1/4 of something in your unit rate, a lot of times that means that you need to use the other unit rate. Not always, but a lot of times. So let's look at this one. So you have 3/4 cake to feed 1/3 of the class. So 3/4 of the cake, 1/3 of the class. So that's a rate, but it's not a unit rate. We want to know, all right, if I want to feed the whole class, that's 1, the whole thing, how much cake do I need? And just like we did before, the unit rate you divide. So we just divide, I know it's fractions, but you still just divide 3/4 divided by 1/3. And that equals 2 1/4. That actually is pretty useful information. Because you know, all right, if I have my whole class.
Excuse the interruption.
Sorry about that, that was an interruption from the intercom. But basically what I'm saying is, if I have a whole class instead of 1/3, because usually we don't give cake to 1/3, we give cake to the whole class. Well, I need 2 1/4 cake. So I need 2 cakes and then 1/4 of another cake to feed everyone. So that's pretty useful information. And then we could find the unit rate the other way too. But I think we're almost out of time, so let's not do that. Let's do this one. So half hour, let's find our unit rate. It's a half hour. We want to know, all right. So there's our rate. So we want to know, all right, our unit rate, how long does it take it to go 1 degree? That's the unit rate. And to get that, just like before, we divide. And we get 2 1/2. So every 2.5 hours, it goes up 1 degree. And the video may end abruptly here, we'll see, but let me just try it the other way. If we wanted to find out the unit rates for hours instead, we could say, well, 1/5 degree for every 1/2 hour. And we could do the same thing. Now we want to know, all right, per hour, which is also helpful. You may want to know how many hours per degree, but you also may want to know, all right, for the hours, how much does it go up for every 1 hour? So just the same, we always divide to find the unit rate. So you're going to divide 1/5 by 1/2, and that's 2/5. So what that's saying is every hour it goes up 2/5 of a degree. So depending on your situation, you may need a different unit rate. You may need to know, all right, it takes 2.5 hours to go up 1 degree, or you may need to know that every hour it goes up 2/5 degree,